Good morning, everyone. It's my privilege today to be talking to this distinguished gathering of professional experts in the field. My colleague Eva and we are delighted to be here today to talk to you about teachers' collective reflexivity, meant for students' collective agency in the process of 21st century skills acquisition. Let us begin by briefly introducing ourselves. My name is Olena Plakhotnikova. I am an assistant professor teaching English at the Department of Language Training, Educational and Scientific Center, Institute of Biology and Medicine, Taras Shevchenko National University of Kyiv, Ukraine. And it is now my great pleasure to give the floor to my colleague Eva.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Eva Seidl, a German as a foreign language teacher at the Department of Translation Studies and at the Center for Language, Plurilingualism and Didactics at the University of Graz in Austria.
Now, I would like to move on to a brief outline of today's talk. First of all, we will discuss the general context of our topic. Then, we will elicit the three possible future histories according to Felicitas Macgilchrist and colleagues. In the next section, we will talk about our educational contexts, mine and Eva's. Then we will move on to our reflexivity for students' collective agency. And we will finish our presentation with concluding thoughts.
Let me start with the general context. In his influential book from 2018, 21 Lessons for the 21st Century, Harari suggests that teaching methods have to adapt to new circumstances in our troubled world, and that education in general should focus on 4 C's, which are critical thinking, communication, collaboration, and creativity as guiding principles for any curriculum. These principles are somewhat reflected in the 2021 UNESCO report on the futures of higher education. Our own and our planet's vulnerability against climate crisis, social inequalities, political extremism, and armed conflict threaten to undermine aspirations and hope. How can we think about the future if we don't seem able to cope with the present? However, that's exactly what we must do, since the solutions to tomorrow's issues are grounded in today's world.
Higher education has an important responsibility with its core functions of knowledge generation and knowledge sharing. It can enact change and equip future generations to make their own contributions if it is student-centered, inclusive, responsive, empowering, and strives for global cohesion.
We must equip our students with 21st century skills, or future skills, as Ehlers prefers to call them. He lists 17 of them and locates them within a 3-dimensional action space highlighted in this map in 3 different colors. In our view, they perfectly relate to Harari's 4 C's. Communication and collaboration, here at the top left as communication and cooperation competence. Critical thinking as reflective competence. And creativity as, for example, innovation competence.
Let us now discuss possible future histories from the paper by Macgilchrist and colleagues. If the solutions to tomorrow's issues are grounded in the world of today, the same holds true for how we will look back on our current times in the future. The political, pedagogical, and technological decisions that we take today will inevitably shape our future. This is plausibly demonstrated in the speculative social science fiction paper written in 2019 as if it were 2040. Macgilchrist and colleagues sketch 3 possible scenarios or future histories of the 2020s, looking back on the decade from the year 2040. In the first scenario, students are imagined as smooth, competent, post-democratic technology users. They wish to increase their productivity by optimizing themselves, living polished lives in a frictionless high-tech world. Scenario number 2 depicts students as digital nomads or entrepreneurial selves who exploit digitalization for individualism, which is pushed to the fore.
And in the third scenario, which we would like to promote, students are imagined as participatory, democratic, collective agents, exploring more equitable forms of living in a socio-ecological technical future that the planet can sustain.
Let us now move on to my educational context, which is English for academic purposes within the Master of Science programs Biotechnology and Ecology, with students discussing global issues, sustainability, and environmental matters in English, while reflecting on their roles and active engagement in society. The activities in the course English for academic purposes must prepare students for their professional lives as competent language users.
And as I said before, I teach German as a foreign language within the context of translation and interpreting-oriented language education, which is often considered within the framework of languages for specific purposes. More precisely, language classes in the BA Transcultural Communication are the basis if students continue with an MA in Translation Studies. But let's now turn to the main part of our talk, that is our reflexivity for students' collective agency. After Olena and I had met in Austria in an academic encounter in 2012, we stayed in touch via social media, but met in Austria after the outbreak of war in Ukraine. Since then, and with Olena back in Kyiv, we have been in touch regularly through online video calls, social media, and emails. For emotional support and in order to help our students and ourselves to cope with difficult situations, we exchanged thoughts on how and what we teach, but also shared continuing professional development-related materials. As for future skills, we heavily worked on our communication competence, reflective competence, and self-competence. And for this talk especially, on our cooperation competence.
Crucial is the use of drama-informed approach to teaching that can be incorporated in classroom in the following ways. Predictable schedule and routine meant for safety, clear expectations and communication, offering options wherever possible, for example, choice of topics, co-creating group standards, reduce didactic teaching where able, acting upon student feedback, sharing power where able, student presentations to teach material, for example, and projecting optimism and unconditional positive regard for students, but not endorsing misbehaving.
In their book on ecologies for learning and practice, Barnett and Jackson, who promote lifelong and life-wide learning, remind us how important it is to prepare students for a lifetime of learning and performing in the more unstructured world outside of formalized education, that is often messy, unstructured, ambiguous, risky, conflictual, experiential, and emotional.
To summarize, we would like to share our concluding thoughts. Gaudelli defines being educated in the 21st century as thinking of the world less as a repository of resources and a dump, but more as an inviolable entity. In contrast to the aforementioned future scenario number 2 of students as digital nomads, he argues for a conception of global citizens as inhabiting particular places and feeling a sense of attachment to those places. This contrasts to a disembodied, technologically connected, and seemingly placeless type of global belonging.
Now, more than ever, we need creativity and critical thinking in the higher education language classroom. In line with Mairi and colleagues, we believe that 21st century skills help students develop critical engagement and reflexivity and help them better understand the relationship between power, language, social groups, and social practices. Therefore, teachers should challenge themselves and their students to reflect on their roles in society and actively engage with the world with a strong feeling of personal agency.
Moreover, we have to adapt ourselves to new reality, taking into account trauma-informed approaches, and be ready to face the challenges of today's world. Shown in the next 2 slides are the references to the materials used in this presentation. In conclusion, Eva and me, we would just like to thank you all for your attention and say that we both are happy to participate in this conference.
And we are happy to answer any questions. Thank you.
Thank you so much.